Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today. I've been planning on being there, but state business has pulled me away. But I know this entire conference is going to be amazing. I want to thank Karen Ritzenhoff and all of the conference organizers for the hard work they have put in to make this happen. Dr. Ritzenhoff saw me walking around campus last fall and asked me if I'd like to speak. Of course, I said yes. What an honor to be among so many distinguished critics and scholars from Connecticut, the US, and around the world. I'll admit, I don't believe I was invited to give a talk because of my scholarly expertise in this area. I was invited because I'm the chancellor of our system and because I'm Asian. And you know what? That's okay. But I hope to contribute to this conference with some perspective and my personal story. Because the fact that you are having this conference is important. It's important to research and critical to the academic lens and rising trajectory of several fields. It's also important to people like me, who decades ago never would have dreamed of a conference like this. Finally, it's important to our students who will normalize these next few days and expect such dialogue, investigation, and focus to be the baseline as they continue in their own journeys. So, who am I? I was born in Taipei, Taiwan in 1972 and moved to the US with my parents in 1973. My parents both had good jobs in Taiwan, but came to the US for a better life, for me. But life at first was not necessarily better. My mother spoke some English, so she waited tables. My father did not speak good English, so we pumped gas and stocked grocery shelves. We didn't have a lot of money, and somehow they made it work. This is not an uncommon story, but to me, back then, it felt uncommon. We lived in Levittown, New York, the only non-white family in our neighborhood. At school, I was teased and bullied. I didn't understand anything about anything, except that I was different. I didn't learn about Levittown's racist past until I was maybe in my 30s, and frankly, I didn't think about or understand anything about structural or systemic racism until I was well into my 40s. As a kid, growing up, I just knew I was an outsider. But growing up wasn't all horrible. There were a lot of things I loved and looked forward to, like Kung Fu theater. Some of you may remember if you grew up in the 80s. Every Saturday afternoon, there was a Kung Fu movie, and you scrambled to make sure you were in front of that TV to watch. These were mostly Hong Kong films made in the 70s, poorly dubbed, and 100% scintillating. The Five Deadly Venoms and Five Fingers of Death or Unbeatable Dragon. You see my point. For a 10-year-old Chinese kid in New York, those 2 hours every Saturday were an important escape. What would it be like to be a chiseled, fearless warrior, the slayer of evil, or savior of a land? What would it be like to be able to use your fists and feet, not to mention swords and spears and nunchucks like that, to be superhuman and fly through the air with kicks and twists and spins? Because growing up in the 80s, day to day, I had no such heroes. I already worshiped Bruce Lee, even though he died just 1 year after I was born. The flying kicks, the 12-pack abs, the 1-inch punch, the speed and grace of a killer angel, and the facial expressions to make sure we all knew that if he was killing someone or just kicking their ass, he truly, truly meant it. Later this conference, you'll hear from Charles Yu, and he will talk about his brilliant novel, Interior Chinatown. Please, do not miss that talk. His book breaks down, better than I ever could, why Bruce Lee was, and still is, the ultimate. We loved Bruce Lee so much that we even loved his impersonators, Bruce Lai or Bruce Lei, and I'm sure there are at least one or two others. It didn't matter. Those folks looked like me and did things I wished I could. They allowed a young Chinese boy in New York to dream. Because when there wasn't Kung Fu theater or a Bruce Lee knockoff, there was no me or fantasy me on screen. Even the martial arts movies I grew up with, Karate Kid or Bloodsport, or movies with Chuck Norris and eventually Steven Seagal, had white heroes. Let's meditate on that for a second. Martial arts movies with white heroes. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed them. I will still sit down and watch Karate Kid from whichever point I pick it up when I'm flipping channels. But Asian faces were not present on big or small screens. Even the television series Kung Fu, think about it. The show's title is Kung Fu, starred a non-Asian actor playing a Shaolin monk, a role that Bruce Lee, the real Bruce Lee, was passed up for. So, ages 12 through 18 were kind of a blur. I was one of 3 Asians in my high school. I couldn't ignore it, but I did everything I could to not think about race. I was still an outsider, and nothing was going to change that. I just tried to blend in day to day and survive. I do remember one moment during that time, and it would be a moment that would eventually change my life. I was a senior in high school and working at a nightclub, picking up garbage, stocking the bar. We were closing, but I saw on the television images of smoke and fire, shadows and chaos. I saw faces, Chinese faces. I saw soldiers with guns and tanks and people hurt and crying. I saw anguish and I saw blood. This was not a show or a movie. I was watching coverage of the Tiananmen Square massacre. I remember feeling numb, not sure what to think or what to do. So I went back to work, and then I went home. And eventually, I went to bed.
Tanks, armored personnel carriers, and troop trucks came rumbling down Chang'an Boulevard towards Tiananmen Square. There was quite a bit of gunfire as the convoy passed. The crowds that were still in the streets scattered in panic. Some of the crowds went back out on the streets, and they are now burning a bus at an intersection near Tiananmen Square in a gesture of defiance.
Government loudspeakers told the students that they must all leave the area or they could not guarantee the safety or lives of anyone left in Tiananmen.
It wasn't until I was in college that I distinctly remember Asian faces on screen again. It was the 90s, and there was talk of a new show. It was going to be groundbreaking. It was going to change things. It was going to give us Asians hope and a kind of representation in the mainstream that we'd never had before. Maybe it was the kind of show that would validate us, prove that we deserved respect, that we were not outsiders, but legitimate threads of the American tapestry, like everyone else. This is what we saw.
I'm gonna start.
Eric, we will eat when all members of the family are present.
In old country, one sit at the table 12 hours waiting for great-grandfather Kim to join us. Turn out he die overnight. Meal get cold, great-grandfather cold. Patty.
Why don't I go check on her?
Stuart, your sister knows what time we eat.
Of course she does. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm afraid I let my tummy take precedence over tradition.
Oh, jeez. Well, we're probably going to see Psycho Sluts from Hell at the Plex. No, I will not go to the Rialto. Well, for one thing, they don't carry the large size Good and Plenty. And for another, their floors are always sticky. And I don't even know why it's sticky. It's like tar or something. It's so... I gotta go.
Margaret, do you know why I encourage your brother to become a cardiologist?
No.
Because I always knew that one day you'd give me a heart attack. What are you wearing?
Funny how fashion come back. Your uncle in the Seoul have a concubine who dressed just like that.
I have a date with Kyle.
Kyle, you're not still seeing him. Oh, I don't like him.
You don't have to like him. He's dating me.
He's wrong for you.
I'm not gonna get into this, Mom.
Oh, good for you, Margaret. For once we can have a nice family meal without you and your mother.
Okay, why is he wrong for me? And I hope you've got something better than he's not Korean.
I do. He's American.
Oh, well, I've got news for you, Mom. I'm American, Eric is American, even Stuart is American. Tell her.
I'll try. Mom, 참으세요. 나보내는 아니에요.
Be good, sweetheart.
I like rice, it's binding.
Mother.
Kimchi is a bulk.
Mother.
Bulk, binding.
Dad, there's someone here to see you.
Good.
Dad, this is Lonnie.
Park. I have the books you special ordered for your bookstore, Mr. Kim.
I didn't special order any books. Are you
Of
sure?
course you ordered books. Don't you remember phoning the publisher? You know, Lonnie is about to start graduate school at MIT.
In the spring.
He's a very smart boy. Tell Margaret what you are studying.
The behavior of neutrinos and superheated gases.
Those aren't special order books, are they?
Oh, why, of course they are.
Phone books. My mother put you up to this, didn't she? Mother, I've told you about these fix-ups.
A friend of mine came this close to achieving cold fusion.
In college, I decided I was going to be a writer. So I studied and found my literary heroes. Cormac McCarthy, Don DeLillo, Philip Roth, William Faulkner. See any similarities? I didn't study Chinese or Asian writers. I was too ignorant and too stubborn to explore, still pushing away my Chinese history and heritage. I didn't listen to the advice of my professors. They told me that my writing was good, technical, but lacked heart and depth and passion. I told them they were wrong. Doesn't that sound familiar? It wasn't until graduate school that I started to listen. My advisors, John Balaban and Lester Gordon, pushed me. They both had incredible stories and work driven by their experiences, their passions, the disruptions and tragedies and joys that shaped their lives. So I asked myself, what pushed me? What shaped me? And what disrupted me? And it forced me to see and embrace who I was and who my family was. Imposter syndrome is real until you become comfortable with who you are. Then you are no longer an imposter. I thought back to Tiananmen Square, that night in the club, watching destruction burn. Just a day later, there would be the man in front of the tank. I wanted to know who he was.
See that guy?
No.
There's a guy in front of the front tank. Standing right in front of him.
climbing it. He's climbing on.
Writing Sons of Heaven was cathartic. The novel imagines the life of Tank Man. It was a test, it was an obsession, and it is the one thing that has instrumentally and tangibly changed every aspect of my life. Sons of Heaven to me was a reconciliation. I had to reconcile the fact that there was so much I didn't know about Chinese history, about my own family's history, and about myself. There was also the process of writing for validation. Would the book be published? Would it be successful? Would it make a difference and matter in the world? It was published, fortunately. But was it successful? Yes and no. Did it become a movie and make me filthy rich? No. Did I even earn out my advance? Not even close. But did it help me in my life? Absolutely. So I'm going to call it a success. Did it make a difference or matter in the world? I'll say this. A few years ago, I was on a panel with someone who said Sons of Heaven was the first book he had read where he felt he saw himself. I was blown away. Because if you can create art that moves people, that makes them connect, makes them feel seen, then it matters. Maybe that is how we should calibrate success. My second novel was a bit of a lark. My wife and I got married on a Saturday, and on Sunday, our wedding announcement came out in the New York Times. On Monday, I got a call from an editor, an Asian woman who had read Sons of Heaven and saw the wedding announcement. She asked me if I wanted to write a book. Deep in the Mountains was published less than 2 years later, and it was another journey of reconciliation. It allowed me to delve further into art, the study of Chu Chizan and Chinese painting, and connecting that to my own grandmother, who was a politician, but also a painter. It allowed me to examine my own past, the complex relationship between immigrant parents and first-generation children, the balance between being seen and unseen, being young and finding yourself, and coming to terms with who and what you are. I don't get a lot of fan mail these days, which is the nice way of saying I don't get fan mail. Deep in the Mountains certainly did not make the Amazon Top 100 list, much less the New York Times bestseller list. I don't know if Deep in the Mountains has been read by some Chinese or Asian kid out there who might say, wow, I get that. Or they might say, this story's dumb. I don't know. But if they read it, maybe they'll see and feel even a small glimmer or twinge. Maybe it will make them feel comfortable and okay, just for a moment, like they belong on the page, or the screen, or in the classroom or conference room, or just in life. Maybe it will tell them that their challenge is a shared one, and that they are not alone. I hope this is the case. And if it is, then this book too, I would call a success. It wasn't until after grad school, when I was working, that I remember a film with all Asian characters and an Asian story in the mainstream. I'd never seen anything like it. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, directed by the great Ang Lee. It's a martial arts film, but it's also a drama and a period piece, a sliver of Chinese history and mythological fiction that's well acted, beautifully produced, and ultimately groundbreaking. I think it's clear we've made even more progress in the last 23 years since Crouching Tiger. So here, I'm going to remind you, I'm just a guy, a writer. I'm not a filmmaker or historian. If I miss a title in this list, don't get mad at me, but what an abundance of talent and variety of stories and representation we have today. Crazy Rich Asians and Minari, Pachinko and Parasite, Shang-Chi, and animated films like Turning Red and Bao, and so much more. Of course, there is the namesake of this conference, the indelible Squid Game. And now, maybe next year's conference, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. These are great works. Some of them will become legend. They tell remarkable stories, and they make us see and feel in ways we have not before, with characters we have historically never seen portrayed as anything but the other. They show us what I had hoped All American Girl might begin to show: that we are here, that we belong, and that we are human and not the other. We are not objects or punchlines or sideshows or affectations. We are indeed legitimate strands of America and the American story. The penetration and permeation of these great works drives home that message, charts that path, and paves the way. But why is this so important to me personally? Because the 10-year-old kid in me who wished he wasn't Chinese, who just wanted to be like everyone else, that kid sees where we are now and knows the pain was worth it and knows he is not alone. The 30-year-old me, the writer trying to find his way, looking for a path beyond tokenism, who was mystified by barriers he could not see and did not understand, wondering about white editors and why they would care, and white readers, why would they care? That struggling, upcoming writer and young man knows that he wasn't all wrong and knows he is part of something that grew into something more, and that he was not and is not alone. The 50-year-old me, the professor and administrator, the husband and father, he sees progress and knows that his children, and maybe someday his grandchildren, will find all this to be normal. Asians on TV, Asians in movies, Asians in books and in music. Maybe BTS won't be a K-pop band anymore. They'll just be a band. This 50-year-old, 51 to be exact, can have more faith that the world will accept his daughters without thinking and not find their pearl and golden skin and round faces and almond-shaped eyes to be of any note at all. They will just be, which is all any of us can truly want. I said at the beginning that this conference is important. All of your work in this vein, in this arena, is important. The arc and trajectory that you are contributing to is important. It is important to me, it is important to us, and it is important to all who will come after. So I thank you. With such events, they are sui generis and cannot be replicated. Please take all this in, because it will not happen exactly this way with anyone ever again. That is art, that is passion, and that is life. I'm grateful that you have spent this time with me, and thank you for continuing this important work.